Our next speaker is, how do you pronounce it? Sankar Sivarajah. So, our next speaker is Sankar Sivarajah. Sankar's current research interest includes exploring the emergent role of digital technologies in the context of the circular economy and reverse logistics, sustainable operations management, and the use of technology by governments. He works with leading industry and government organizations on several multi-million-pound research and development projects funded by the European Commission and by Qatar National Research Fund, addressing smart cities, energy-efficient data centers, social innovation. He actively publishes in leading peer-reviewed journals and is an invited member of the editorial advisory board of journals. Sankar was also awarded by Cass Business School, City University in London, a honorary member to the Beta Gamma Sigma Society, an international honor society recognizing business excellence. He is also a member of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport UK, British Academy of Management, and Association of Information System. Please, Sankar, thank you.
Thank you for that. I'm going to stay away from the podium because I just like moving around, so bear with me. Thank you, Professor Oussama, for having us here, actually. So my name is Sankar. So I work for University of Bradford School of Management, all the way from UK, from the Leeds region. That's the Hogwarts building which I work in. I'm proud to be there, but it's also kind of a reality check to see where we are. I will talk about you might think about circular economy. Is it another buzzword we are just going to be throwing there? I'm hoping out of this presentation is just to give you an understanding of what this circular economy concept is, also how the technology plays a part of it, right? So we are, not just myself, there's a lot of other colleagues as well who work in this area called circular economy. I joined recently last year, so there's a lot of research which has been ongoing. So we are part of a network called Ellen MacArthur Foundation, a pioneer university network where circular economy is one of the agendas as part of it. So with other organizations as well, with the government stakeholders, with SMEs, with other universities, so like UCL, Sao Paulo in Brazil. So it's a mix of stakeholders coming together to do research, but also to work with theory in practice. So we work in collaboration with them, right? We also have quickly on, if it moves, that's the research and the MBA program, which has been ongoing for 7 years, distance learning. So what we do as an educator is that we also try and work with the CE100 network like Philips, Google, just to try and educate them what this whole concept is. Because if you can't get that across with senior executives, then there won't be a change in the culture, what we are going to be talking about circular economy. So how do you get actually the knowledge transfer? So that's what's ongoing as well. So these are the colleagues who I work with, and myself, I also lead the Logistics, Supply Chain, and Technology Research Center, which sits within the circular economy area, okay? Some of the research areas, what we focus on, quite a broad area. Circular economy is a broad topic, and I'll tell you why. So it can touch upon disciplines such as supply chain to reuse in high tech to food waste issues, and all of us play a small niche areas which we work with collaborative partners, organizations, and stakeholders. Okay, so that's a very brief introduction to what we do and why I'm here to talk about this research topic and how do we move this agenda forward. So, we all work, eat, breathe in a very, very dominant linear economy. What do I mean by that? A linear economy has been working really great. You take something, you make something, you dispose it, right? It's worked well in terms of industrial revolution. There was mass economies of scale. There was a need for it when there was actually scarcity of resources. But actually, is it really doing any good for the society, for the economy, for an organization? That's a question you ask. I think the organizations need to ask. Every single one of us have to ask ourselves, right? What does it lead to, right? It worked well. Don't blame me. It actually works really well even now. But there's a consequence to it. And the consequence is that, and we all know, right? And what is that? What a load of rubbish, right? That's what we create. unintentionally or intentionally, we do it, right? It's how we all work, and that's what the problem is, but it's not leaving it there as a problem. What do we do about it, right? The sustainable concept is there, but it's not just about sustainability, and I'll tell you why. Is it just about another CSR gimmick, or is it just an academic sitting in his own bubble and thinking about it? Not really. You have to work together, right? Like I said, it's not a one-man show. So how do you actually create this movement to change the culture within an organization? What do you do about it? How do you make it happen? And that's what we work with in terms of what the research is. So this is obviously a consequence of linear economy model, okay, and what happens to it. And why? It's because around 2.1 billion tons of waste, and this will be ticking and ticking and ticking as we speak, because the things what we do is 2.1 billion of tons of waste, because 99% of the things what we buy, we just use it, consume it, and think about it in 6 months or so, it's gone. Some of them have a really short product life cycle, right? And some of them might, there are organizations which think about the longevity about product life cycle, but also what's the economic value of it, right? You have an organization, you are not thinking just about, right, let's promote green initiatives, but for an organization to buy into the whole story about being ethical and think about how we responsible consumption, there has to be a financial economic value out of it as well. The business model has to work for an organization to sustain, to be able to have that, right? So the whole circular economy is to think about how that business model innovation can come. So not just the societal environmental issues, but the economic value. And how do you create this economic value? What do we do about it? This is a simple, abstract capture of what we are going to talk about circular economy. I don't want to do a boring lecture with you and talk you through every single building blocks and whatever not, but that should illustrate what a linear economy is currently doing, right? We say, oh, this might be just another recycling thing you're talking about. Actually not. Recycling is one part of it. It's actually the last loop we talk about. Because if you take plastic waste, only 9% of the plastic waste is actually recycled. We consume, us all, we consume more than what we recycle. That's a problem, right? We are a greedy society. We want more. Ownership is key. Can you move that ownership to an access model? Questions, it's easy said and done. How do you actually do it, right? So a circular economy is to think about how do you close the loop of supply chain, right? How do you bring those things back to it? Yeah, everyone's thinking, what do I actually mean by that? Go and Google it, you will get so many different variations of what circular economy is. So what we try and do as a research organization, as actually an organization working together with other stakeholders, is try and get the message across clear, okay? So key 3 fundamental principles to follow. Worked with Ellen MacArthur Foundation as an organization, McKinsey, right, consultancies. The 3 key principles of understanding circular economy is this, right? Just keep this in the mind, I don't want to go too much. It's about designing, thinking about products, materials, services. How do you design out waste and pollution, right? There are different schools of thoughts which you can do and apply. Some might work, might not work. But how do you design out and waste and pollution? Keeping products and materials in constant use, so take the maximum value of it, right? And how about regenerating those natural systems? Easy said and done. So you can actually see how can you actually, but those are the 3 fundamental key principles of a circular economy. Now I'm going to take you through some of the examples of how it is done, right? That's the theory and the concepts. Before you go there, I love this picture. Biomimicry Institute, it's a school of thought where it mimics nature, right? Think about how the nature works for a second. There's nothing which goes into waste. Right? The nature is built in an ecosystem where it actually thinks and regenerates itself. Why can't we do that with an organization? 0 hours stuck in traffic. That's our friendly hands, right? And we, humans, smart and clever as we are, always stuck in traffic. We generate this problem ourselves. But how do you actually tackle this problem? Okay? Through, arty-farty language used there, but what's the core economic value? Actual economic value will change, evolving topic. At the country, loads of organizations, governments are actually putting it as part of their policy directives, right? China has adopted it since 2000 now. They need it, so they have adopted it. New Zealand's doing it. Some of the EU countries are doing it. So it's all part of UK has a circular economy policy written by the government, so there is influence from there. But it's actually a 600 billion per year for the EU economy, actual value of it, right? And a boost to GDP of 7%. And nowadays, it's not just about CSR, it's actually having circular economy kind of advisors on board to see how you can create and produce designs for products as well as service, which will take back those 3 key principles. Yeah, we have zero waste. Idealistic view, but that's what they are trying to aim to do so. Let's see how the technology plays a part to it. So, because that's the core theme of it, right? And some of the business models which is helping at the moment, as we all know, right? The sharing economy, the shared values, right? The platforms we know, Airbnb to Uber, right? That actually has an intelligent way of thinking. You don't need, like a friend there said about the taxis roaming around and creating more carbon emissions. Actually, can you be more resource efficient, right? Product life extension. Can you think about organizations, I don't know, which actually think about the longevity of a product rather than fast fashion? Fast fashion is a huge problem at the moment, right? You buy something, it's affordable, and then the textiles, what do? Right? It's all thrown out, and it's all going to the landfill. But can we afford to do that? No. And how does technology play a part to do that? 5 disruptive technologies I want to talk about, and innovative cases which has been looking at it. One is biotechnology or bio-based materials, right? And how do they actually use that? Machine-to-machine communication, so a bit of artificial intelligence, but it's more machine-to-machine and high-speed mobile, cloud and big data, robotics, blockchain. So I'll touch every single one of them with an example, rather than just some of the words what I want to kind of touch upon. So first one, this is a startup called Uhu, right? They're skipping Rocks Lab, based in the UK. It's a small startup who came up with seaweed algae-based actual soluble water. You can actually drink that, edible packaging, so that there's no plastic water bottles, actually. So they came about with this bio-based material 5 to 6 years ago, right? And they already started, and where waste is equal to food, so they followed one of the schools of thoughts to try and test it. The problem is it didn't take off big, because there wasn't a use case. Because how can you actually transport this, right? So they were thinking about how do you actually innovate from there. And then an application case. What does London marathons, all the marathons in the world lead? A plastic trail. The beauty out of the health, you actually leave a huge plastic trail behind it, right? And recently what they did was they found an application case, and I'm sure you know what they did, right? In September 2018, there was a London Marathon, and they said, okay, we'll sell this soluble waters in a quantity of water which is needed by marathon runners in a specific, so not over-consuming water as well, that's important, and was actually handed in to all the marathon runners. So they just put it in the mouth and then run. What a perfect application use case, right? And they're actually trying out different areas of where it can. So innovation is important, but also you need to think about where that could apply in a sensible, but also make money. Yeah, the economic financial model is there because then only you can do good, right? If you can't sustain a financial model, hey, you collapsed. What's the point? There's no scalability, right? So that's one. That's using bio-based. Another creative example. These are a US ecovative design who came up with the problem of polystyrene, right? You know how much polystyrene is used for, I don't know, packaging wine bottles to your new TVs or whatnot, right? Styrofoam. How do you eliminate that? Because recycling that material is a real oil-based product. It's really hard energy consumption way of recycling. So they came up with mushroom-based products to actually pack fragile goods for transportation. And it has to be scalable. So actually you can produce this. How does it work? Agricultural waste, right? From all the agricultural waste, they take it back. So they go to the farmers, get the agricultural waste. The technology behind bio-based technology is the mycelium. It's the roots, right, with the mushroom and everything, which strengthens it and also has the ability to grow, right, for scalability. And they came up with all the mushroom material packaging. And they're doing really well. You just have to search online and they have a good business running, right? That is bio-based, one of the bio-based use cases, how it's happening. And look, where there's no waste, yeah, or they're trying to achieve, and a business is running, yeah? Good stuff. Anyway, so food waste, huge problem, right? We know is a startup again, teamed up with industries, right? And they thought, heck, actually, we said the biggest thing is to change behavior. how do you actually change behavior? How does technology play a part in changing behavior? So they did a simple model, right? A weighing scale for a large basin, and they had a cloud-based platform which is kind of with a touch screen, where each time someone, an executive chef, says, okay, there's so much food going to waste, he's going to go, he keys in, this is what I'm going to put in, let's say, pasta. What it does is it does a quick turnover check, analytics, what the actual waste is equivalent to the loss you're going to make, or how much sales you would have had. That thinks, consumption, the person thinks, actually, do I need to dump this? Can I think about a way of making use of it or giving it to someone, right? That changes behavior. And that was pretty successfully data-driven, cloud-based, technology-based, analytics on real time to change. It's a small project which was done in the industry, and look what they did. So that helped the restaurant to cut food waste by 40 to 70%, leading to the economic value, right? Margins of 50%. So that simple things could go a long way, and how that could actually change an organization to think, rethink before doing something, right? That's data-driven. Let's go now. I love this. Blockchain, right? Everyone talks about it, distributed ledger. I love it because people here actually took the bigger picture, because it wasn't just about cryptocurrencies, right? It made the whole fame of it. But actually, where can you use it? Application scenarios, it's an emerging area, and it's understandable. But actually, how can you make it for the good? Right? Provenance, UK-based startup, looked at how actually you can track the origin of every single food, the supply chain, right? Biggest problem with collaborating in a commercial environment, we're all competitors. We don't want to be collaborating. I don't want to share my data with you. But how can you actually build that trust? So what they are doing, Coop is a supermarket chain, so they teamed up with them to track and build that with all their supply chain for a tuna product, to actually, from where it's being fished, to every single point with IoT, smart sensors, it tracks every single journey it's had, being able to verify, auditable, if they're actually saying that they're fully ethical consumption. How do you verify those when you're actually doing it in a manual base? So blockchain was one of an open-based technology to be used, and it's successfully working at the moment. So again, 2-3 startups I've talked about, right? And they're actually making real sense of how it can actually work in terms. And you might say, a startup, yeah, it's easy because there's structure. Yeah, it allows them to be innovative. And the actual large organizations might struggle. Apple, yeah, the beauty. They create good stuff, but they also think about what they need to do. This actually came about after negative PR, because they were producing so fast, right? Think about the new iPhone model generations, 1, 2, and now we are in 10, right? And they were producing it so fast, and they did incremental innovation. They already had all these things, but they didn't want to give it to us in one go, right? So what they did, but they were actually targeted as a negative PR. What happens to the electronic waste you create? Landfill. So they introduced robotics in there. They first came up with Liam, right? It was on disassembling product. So every single part, because you can't just get rid of an iPhone, right? Because if you are going to put it back into landfill, every single part in there, around 200 to 300 parts in there, is toxic. And it might be needed for different ways of recycling. So they created Daisy. So first generation was Liam. Now it's Daisy. If you look at it, 200 Apple phones are actually disassembled within an hour, so that every single part can be reused and repurposed. Yeah. HP, so from a startup now we're looking at large organizations trying to lead the way in how you can do intelligent assets. You know the cartridges? So can you actually sense where you're working with the consumer, saying if your actual cartridge is coming down to ink is low, immediately they predict and send a recycling envelope, so the consumer can put it back and send it back. So it's the reverse logistics they look at, so that you're not wasting your time and you're not knowing where to put it down. Because problem with creating garbage as well is the no cleaner output, right? You're just putting it wherever you want. You might contribute to the landfill, right? So it's a convenience factor, and they do it with sensors. And HP is actually leading the way doing that. The last one, I think, is about challenges versus making it happen. I've given you innovative cases which look at it, but it's all good and said. I think one of the topics was about challenges, but I actually think it's bit of both. You can't just call it challenges and leave it. It's actually work. You need to make it happen. So what do you do about it, right? The challenges might be collaboration, but the technology is there. So think about where the innovative supply chain kind of provenance tool, where you can actually have a safe environment to collaborate, right? Equally, rethinking incentives to change those behaviors. How Winnow was doing things, right? Where they put the real kind of, this is how much the waste could be resulting to the profit. And that changes behavior, right? And the policy and the government makers have a role. Technology, a key part to it. Leading by example, right? Some of the small startups will think, well, we can do it. What about the big organizations like Coca-Cola and things? Well, if HP can do it, why can't I do it? Right? The whole concept of thinking. And then finally, yeah, you need money. So that's why there is necessary to create a business model, a circular economy business model, which takes into the account the circular economic construct rather than just an environmental and social construct. So if you can marry that together, that's when you will have a good organization which ties in with the circular economy principles, but also financially viable, so that you have a larger movement. And you can't do that with just one organization. It has to be academics, it has to be government research, policy makers, it has to be small and large organizations to do that. And that is how you rethink and make it happen. So, thank you so much, and thank you for having me.